The first meteor streaked across the evening sky as Tanner Durham locked up his barn. He paused, leaning on his cane, watching the fiery trail with mild interest. Living 30 miles from the nearest town had its perks, pristine night skies being one of them. But when 3 more objects followed, moving too deliberately for natural phenomena, his military instincts kicked in. "That's not right," he muttered, setting his jaw. After 15 years serving in special forces, Tanner had retired to this isolated Montana farm to escape reminders of war. The shrapnel in his leg was reminder enough, yet he couldn't ignore the prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the same feeling that had saved his life countless times in combat. The fourth object veered sharply, descending toward the eastern edge of his property. There was no explosion, just a dull thud that reverberated through the ground beneath his boots. Tanner retrieved his rifle from the gun cabinet. It's not out of fear, but preparation. He'd learned long ago that unpreparedness was simply another word for vulnerability. Grabbing a flashlight and first aid kit, he hiked toward the impact site, his leg protesting with each step across the uneven terrain. The object had carved a shallow trench through his east field, leaving scorched earth. In its wake, steam rose from the metallic hull, which gleamed like oil under moonlight. It wasn't a meteor. It was some kind of escape pod, roughly the size of a small car, with symbols Tanner didn't recognize, etched into its surface. As he approached, a section of the hull slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Tanner raised his rifle, muscles tensing from ingrained training. What emerged, however, made him lower it slightly. A figure stumbled out, humanoid, but definitely not human. Its skin was pale lavender with a faint luminescence, and what appeared to be delicate gill-like structures pulsed along its neck. Tanner somehow knew, wore what looked like a torn uniform of some kind. Dark purple fluid seeped from a wound on her arm. She spotted him and froze, her four-fingered hand reaching for something at her belt before falling limply to her side. Her large, pupilless eyes, the color of burnished copper, assessed him with unmistakable intelligence. "I mean no harm," she said in accented but perfect English, her voice melodic but strained. "I am Vela, diplomatic envoy of the Ashtari Collective." Tanner kept his distance, decades of training preventing him from lowering his guard completely. "You're bleeding," he observed neutrally. "Your atmosphere. It's compatible, but difficult," she managed, swaying slightly. "The others, ... they'll be coming." Then her legs buckled. Instinct overrode caution. Tanner lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. She weighed surprisingly little, like a child in his arms. Up close, he noticed intricate patterns beneath her skin, pulsing with bioluminescence. "Others?" Tanner asked, already scanning the sky. "Who's coming?" Vela's eyes fluttered. "The cruiser. They tracked our diplomatic vessel, shot us down. I'm the only one who..." Her voice faded as she lost consciousness. Tanner made his decision quickly. The last time he'd brought someone wounded back from a battlefield, it had been his spotter, Hayes, bleeding out in his arms. He hadn't been able to save Hayes. Maybe he could save her. By the time Tanner reached his farmhouse, Vela's breathing had become labored. He laid her on the couch and examined her wound. Some kind of energy weapon had burned through her arm, but the bleeding had slowed. Human medicine might not work on her physiology, but wound care basics seemed universal. As he cleaned and bandaged her injury, Tanner's mind raced. If she was telling the truth, more aliens were coming, hostile ones. But 15 years in special forces had taught him to assess situations critically. This could be the vanguard of an invasion force, a scout testing human defenses. Yet something about her desperation seemed genuine. The torn uniform, the damaged escape pod, not the hallmarks of a planned infiltration. Vela stirred as he finished bandaging her arm. Her copper eyes focused on him with surprising clarity. "You helped me," she stated, sounding perplexed. "Don't make me regret it," Tanner replied, offering her water. "Are these Crozer, and why are they after you?" Vela sat up carefully, accepting the water with a grateful nod. "They are a military empire expanding through this sector of the galaxy. My people sought to warn yours to offer an alliance." Her gill structures fluttered. "We were too late. The Crozer Vanguard fleet is already approaching your solar system." Tanner's expression remained impassive, but his mind calculated rapidly. and I should believe you, because within 3 of your Earth days, they will begin systematic attacks on your population centers, Vela replied solemnly. And because I can help you fight them. Outside, more light streaked across the darkening sky. Whatever was coming, Tanner knew his quiet retirement had just ended. Some battles found you, no matter how far you ran. Dawn broke with an unnatural stillness as Tanner loaded his truck. No birds sang, no wildlife stirred us if the natural world sensed the coming storm. Vela stood beside him, now wearing his old field jacket that hung loosely on her slender frame. Her wound looked better after a night's rest, the purple discoloration fading to a dull lavender. Your military leaders must be warned, she said, watching Tanner secure a canvas bag containing weapons and supplies. The Crozer pattern is always the same. They target communication systems first, then power grids. Tanner slammed the trucks. Tailgate shut. The nearest military base is 4 hours away. But there's someone closer who might listen. As they drove through winding mountain roads, Tanner explained his plan. Jemison runs the Regional Emergency Management Office. Former Army Intelligence. If anyone will believe us without throwing us in a padded room, it's her. Vela studied the passing landscape with fascination. Your world is ... vibrant. So much water, so much green. The Crozer come from a desert world, they covet planets like yours. The small government building in Pinewood looked unimpressive. A concrete structure with a single flag fluttering half-heartedly outside. Inside, after some persuasion and mention of a shared deployment in Kandahar, Tanner secured a private meeting with Director Jemison, Olivia. Jemison was a no-nonsense woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes widened. Fractionally, when Vela entered the room, but to her credit, she maintained her composure. I've seen a lot, Durham, but this is ... She trailed off, studying Vela. Director Vela greeted her with a formal bow. I regret that our first contact must occur under such circumstances. For the next hour, Vela outlined the Crozer threat using Jemison's office computer to create startlingly detailed schematics of their vessels and weapons. Tanner watched Jemison's expression shift from skepticism to grim acceptance. I believe you, Jemison finally said. But getting Washington to act on this without proof... She shook her head. They'll think I've lost my mind. Then we need proof, Tanner replied. Vela says they'll target communications first. We need to set up independent monitoring systems, catch them in the act. Jemison nodded slowly. I know. Some people off-the-books types. Former colleagues who won't ask too many questions. She reached for her secure phone. We can establish a monitoring network by nightfall. As Jemison made calls, Tanner noticed Vela had gone still, her head tilted as if listening to something beyond human hearing. Her copper eyes had darkened to amber. They've entered your atmosphere, she whispered. Scout ships. Small, stealthy. They're scanning your defense systems. Jemison paused mid-call. How can you possibly know that? My people share a quantum communication network, Vela explained. Some of my kind are monitoring from afar. They cannot intervene directly, but they can observe. Tanner's mind raced with tactical possibilities. If they're scanning us, can we feed them false information? Make them think our defenses are stronger than they are? A hint of a smile crossed Vela's face. This adaptive thinking, it's why the Crozer fear humans more than they admit. They're methodical, unchanging. You improvise. By sunset, Jemison had assembled a makeshift team of 6 former intelligence officers and military specialists in an abandoned radio station outside town. Equipment was scavenged from government surplus and private collections, nothing that would trigger official attention. First signs of interference, announced Roland, a former NSA analyst hunched over modified equipment. Experiencing unexplained disruptions across the northern hemisphere. Starting, Vela confirmed grimly. Tanner watched the screens with growing unease. The familiar weight of pre-battle tension settled on his shoulders, feeling he'd hoped never to experience again. Yet part of him welcomed it, like greeting an old, dangerous friend. We need to warn people, Jemison insisted, without causing panic, Tanner countered. Mass hysteria would play right into their hands. As they debated strategy, all electronics in the room suddenly went dead. Screens blinked out, equipment hummed into silence. Through the window, Tanner saw lights across the valley flicker and die. EMP, he said quietly. Localized but effective. In the eerie silence that followed, Vela's bioluminescent patterns glowed more intensely, casting faint purple light across her worried face. "The vanguard has arrived," she whispered. "Storm breaks tomorrow." The first attack came not with explosions, but with silence. By morning, all digital communications had failed across 3 states. No cell phones, no internet, no radio. The sudden information vacuum caused more confusion than panic. Most people assumed it was a technical glitch or temporary outage. Tanner knew better. From the roof of the radio station, he watched distant contrails crisscross the sky, too high and too geometric to be commercial aircraft. Beside him, Vela tracked their movements with grim recognition. "Atmospheric insertion craft," she explained. "They're establishing a perimeter before ground forces deploy." Below them, Jemison's improvised resistance team worked feverishly to establish analog communication networks, old ham radios, physical runners, even signal mirrors, anything that didn't rely on compromised digital systems. "We need to evacuate vulnerable populations," Tanner said, his military mind already mapping fallback positions and defensive perimeters. "Remote areas first, they'll be cut off completely when roads are compromised." "With what authority?" Jemison challenged. "We have no official sanction." Tanner's expression hardened. "Then we created your emergency management credentials, forged orders if necessary. When the truth becomes clear, no one will question our methods." By midday, their small team had coordinated evacuations of 3 outlying communities under the pretext of a hazardous materials spill. Each evacuation site became an impromptu recruiting ground for their resistance former military personnel, law enforcement, anyone with useful skills. The first direct attack came at dusk. A cruiser scout ship, sleek and predatory, descended over Pinewood's water treatment facility. Tanner watched through binoculars as mechanical appendages extended from its hull, attaching devices to the infrastructure. "Biological agents," Vela confirmed, her gill structures flaring with agitation. "They're poisoning your water supply." Without hesitation, Tanner organized a small strike team. Using hunting rifles and improvised explosives, they approached. Under cover of gathering darkness, the alien technology was advanced, but the cruiser clearly didn't expect resistance so early in their invasion. The scout ship's crewed all, armored figures with rigid insectoid movements, fell to coordinated rifle fire. "Their armor has weak points at the joints," Vela had instructed, "and they rely heavily on tech-enhanced vision. Bright lights will disorient them temporarily." Her intelligence proved accurate. Skirmish was brief and decisive. As Tanner examined the disabled craft, Vela downloaded crucial tactical data from its systems. "This changes everything," she said, eyes widening as she reviewed the information. "Their main assault is targeting military installations tonight. They believe your leadership will be disabled in the first wave." Jemison immediately dispatched runners to warn nearby bases. "Will they believe us in time?" she wondered aloud. "They'll believe the evidence," Tanner replied, gesturing to the alien corpse they'd secured as proof. Throughout the night, similar reports filtered in through their makeshift communication network. Small resistance groups were forming spontaneously across the region, some successful, others overwhelmed. The cruiser clearly hadn't anticipated such rapid decentralized response. By dawn, the invasion was fully underway. Larger cruiser vessels now hovered openly above major cities. In some areas, panic and confusion reigned. But in others, where warnings had been heeded, organized resistance was forming. "Your people adapt quickly," Vela observed as they watched refugees stream into their growing camp. "The cruiser's strategy relies on paralysis through shock. When that fails, ... We fight back," Tanner finished simply. Their mountain base now housed over 300 people, a mix of civilians and fighters. What they lacked in advanced weapons, they made up for in determination and Vela's crucial intelligence about cruiser weaknesses. As Tanner surveyed the improvised training grounds where farmers and shop owners learned guerrilla tactics from veterans, he felt something unexpected hope. Humanity wasn't rolling over. They were standing up, fighting back with whatever they had. They underestimated us, he told Vela, as the sun rose on the third day of the invasion. Her copper eyes met his, a newfound respect evident in their depths. The Crozer have conquered 17 worlds, she said quietly, but they've never encountered humans before? For the first time since the invasion began, Vela smiled a genuine expression that transformed her alien features. I believe, she said simply, that will prove to be their most fatal error. 3 weeks into the invasion, Tanner's mountain base had transformed from a hastily organized refuge into a formidable resistance headquarters. Repurposed shipping containers served as barracks, while a network of caves housed their command. Centers safe from Crozer thermal scanning, the morning strategy meeting brought unexpected news. A scout team had returned with 7 survivors from a research facility, including Dr. Haruki Nakamura, a quantum physicist whose eyes widened upon seeing Vela. Extraordinary, he breathed, studying her with undisguised fascination. Ashtari, aren't you? The bioluminescent patterns, the gill structures, they match theoretical xenobiology models perfectly. Vela inclined her head. You know of my people? Only through intercepted deep space transmissions, Nakamura explained. We've been studying them for years, but official channels dismissed our findings as anomalies. This chance encounter proved invaluable. Nakamura's team had been developing experimental communication technology that could potentially bypass Crozer jamming systems. The Crozer rely on predictable communication frequencies, Vela explained, as they examined Nakamura's equipment. Their methodical nature is both strength and weakness. They cannot comprehend true randomness. Nakamura nodded enthusiastically. That's precisely what our quantum fluctuation transmitter exploits, genuinely random frequency shifts that follow no discernible pattern. As Nakamura's team worked to expand their communication capabilities, Tanner focused on military strategy. Reconnaissance revealed that while Crozer controlled major cities and infrastructure, their hold was far from complete. Their forces were concentrated, leaving vast areas with minimal occupation. They're following textbook invasion protocol, Vela observed, pointing to a map where they'd marked Crozer positions. Secure command centers, control resources, then expand methodically. They expect organized resistance to come from established military units. But we're not following their textbook, Tanner replied with grim satisfaction. Instead of direct confrontation, they employed hit-and-run tactics. Small teams would strike Crozer supply lines, then disappear into the landscape. They targeted sensors and communication relays rather than well-defended strongpoints. Each success, however small, provided valuable salvage technology and boosted morale. Jemison's network expanded daily as their quantum transmitters connected isolated resistance cells across the continent. Reports came in of similar guerrilla movements worldwide, humanity adapting, learning, fighting back with creativity the regimented Crozer couldn't anticipate. In Seoul, they're using modified civilian drones to disrupt Crozer sensors, Jemison reported. In Lagos, they've discovered the Crozer can't track movement through certain types of smoke. Each discovery was shared instantly through their growing network. The resistance learned and evolved faster than the Crozer could adapt their tactics. 1. Evening, as rain drummed against the metal roof of the command center, Vela approached Tanner with unexpected news. More of my people have arrived, she said, her copper eyes bright with excitement. A small stealth vessel managed to penetrate. The Crozer blockade. We've brought crucial intelligence and weapons. The Ashtari delegation arrived under cover of darkness 3 tall. Slender beings with the same luminescent skin patterns as Vela. They carried containers of what looked like liquid metal that shifted and reformed continuously. Quantum phase. Weaponry, explained Zeth, the Ashtari commander, capable of penetrating Crozer shielding technology. Not many, but enough to target their command vessels. As humans and Ashari worked together to integrate the new weapons into their strategy, Tanner noticed something remarkable. Despite vast physiological and cultural differences, They found common ground in their adaptive approach to problems, where Crozer relied on rigid hierarchy and protocols. Both humans and Ashtari valued creative solutions and individual initiative. "Your species is unlike any we've encountered," Zeth told Tanner as they tested a phase weapon on a salvaged piece of Crozer armor. The metal disintegrated instantly. Most civilizations fall quickly to Crozer methodical conquest. They cannot comprehend your unpredictability. Tanner watched as a former schoolteacher worked alongside an Ashtari technician, both laughing, as they solved a complex calibration problem through an improvised sign language. "Humans adapt," Tanner said simply. "It's what we do best." That night, as their expanded alliance finalized plans for a coordinated strike against a major Crozer command center, Vela found Tanner alone, staring at the stars from an observation point. "When I crashed on your farm," she said quietly, "expected to die alone on an alien world. Instead, I found hope in the most unexpected place." Tanner's weathered face softened slightly. "That's another human trait. We're stubborn about survival and others. The Crozer believe themselves invincible because they've never truly been challenged," Vela replied. "Tomorrow that changes."
Yes.
Moonlight illuminated the valley below where teams of humans and Ashtar prepared for battle. Tanner allowed himself a moment of perspective. In just weeks, humanity had gone from isolated and vulnerable to part of something larger, an alliance that might just save them all. The quiet moment ended as Jemison approached with urgent news. "Nakamura's team has cracked the Crozer command frequency. We can insert false orders directly into their communication network." Tanner straightened, his mind already calculating possibilities. "Then it's time to show these invaders exactly what humans are capable of when pushed too far." Dawn broke with unnatural green light as the Crozer command vessel adjusted position above what had once been Denver. Inside the mountain base, final preparations were underway for Operation Thunderclap, a coordinated global strike against Crozer command and control systems. Remember, Tanner addressed the assembled strike teams. Timing is everything. Each target must be hit simultaneously to prevent them from adapting. He nodded to Nakamura, whose quantum transmitters would coordinate the worldwide assault. Vela and Zeth had provided crucial intelligence on Crozer's ship. Architecture, particularly the location of their central processing nodes. These crystalline structures, no larger than a human fist, coordinated all ship functions and tactical decisions. "The Crozer rely on absolute centralized control," Vela explained. "Remove it, and individual units become disoriented. They cannot function without explicit instructions." The plan was audacious. Using Ashtari phase weapons and Nakamura's frequency disruptors, small teams would infiltrate key Crozer vessels. Meanwhile, Jemison would broadcast false retreat orders on Crozer command frequencies, creating confusion in their rigidly hierarchical force structure. As teams deployed, Tanner led the primary strike force toward the Denver command ship. There, transport a modified agricultural sprayer moved under the guise of a Crozer-authorized maintenance vehicle, its signature altered to match approved patterns. "This is insane," muttered Wesley, a former construction worker, now clutching an Ashtari phase rifle. "We're just regular people. How are we supposed to take down an alien warship?" Tanner checked his equipment one final time. The history of humanity is regular people doing impossible things when necessary. He glanced at Vela, who nodded in silent agreement. Their approach went unchallenged. Nakamura's forged authorizations holding under scrutiny. The massive Crozer vessel loomed above them, its hull shimmering with energy fields. Using access codes extracted from captured scout ships, they entered through a maintenance portal inside. The alien architecture was disorienting angular corridors that seemed to defy conventional geometry, illuminated by harsh blue light. Vela guided them confidently through the labyrinth toward the central control node. 15 minutes until synchronized strike, Jemison's voice came through their secured comms. All teams in position globally. They encountered the first resistance. 2 levels into the ship, a patrol of 4 Crozer soldiers. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, as they raised weapons. Tanner signaled his team to hold position. "Watch what happens when you break their pattern," he whispered. then deliberately fired wide of the lead soldier. The unexpected action caused momentary confusion among the cruiser, a split-second hesitation that gave Tanner's team the advantage they needed. The skirmish ended quickly. They expect direct confrontation, Vela explained as they moved past the fallen cruiser. Unconventional tactics disrupt their programming. At the central processing chamber, they faced their greatest challenge, a heavily fortified door guarded by elite cruiser sentinels. Traditional approaches would fail against such defenses. "We need a distraction," Tanner murmured, assessing the situation. Then he noticed maintenance ducts running above the chamber, carrying climate control to the sensitive systems within. With improvised tools and explosive compounds, they redirected the ship's thermal regulation system. Alarms blared as temperature spikes threatened the delicate equipment. As predicted, cruiser protocol demanded immediate response guards abandoning their posts to address the critical system failure. Inside the unguarded chamber, the processing node pulsed with energy, a geometric crystal suspended in a gravity field. Vela quickly attached the phase charges while Nakamura connected the frequency disruptor. "Global strike in 3 minutes," Jemison's voice confirmed as they secured. The final charge, a massive tremor, shook the vessel. Emergency systems activated, sealing compartments throughout the ship. Secondary teams must have struck early, Tanner realized. "We need to move now." They fought their way to an escape route, facing increasingly disorganized cruiser resistance. As they reached the exit port, Nakamura activated the remote detonator. Behind them, the processing node imploded, taking with it the cruiser command structure. Throughout the vessel, lights flickered and systems failed. Similar scenes played out across the globe as processing nodes were simultaneously destroyed on dozens of command ships. From the relative safety of a hillside overlooking Denver, they watched the massive cruiser vessel list sideways, its engines firing erratically. Across the horizon, other ships displayed similar distress, attempting emergency landings, others drifting aimlessly. Frequency intercepts confirm widespread confusion in cruiser forces, Jemison reported triumphantly. They're receiving contradictory orders from multiple sources. In the days that followed, the tide turned decisively, without centralized command. Cruiser units fell into disarray. Some continued fighting with stubborn determination, but many retreated to defensive positions, awaiting instructions that never came. 2 weeks after Operation Thunderclap, the first cruiser surrender occurred. When an isolated garrison in northern Europe laid down weapons, rather than face continued human resistance, others followed as the invaders' rigid hierarchy crumbled. 1 month later, Tanner stood with Vela and representatives from 17 nations as the remaining cruiser command structure formally requested cessation of hostilities. Their rigid programming had never accounted for a scenario where methodical conquest failed so completely. "The cruiser empire has never retreated," Vela remarked quietly as they watched the proceedings. "Until now, they never met humans before," Tanner replied. "Or had Ashtari allies helping those humans?" As delegates discussed terms, Nakamura approached with news from his research team. "We've adapted Ashtari quantum technology to our satellite network. We'll have global communications restored within days." He paused, eyes bright with excitement. "And something else, the principles behind their faster-than-light travel. It's within our grasp now." Tanner gazed thoughtfully at the stars. "Becoming visible in the evening sky, so we won't just rebuild, we'll expand." "Your people faced extinction," Vela observed, "and emerged stronger, more united, with technology centuries beyond what you had before." Her copper eyes held a mixture of admiration and caution. "The galaxy will never be the same. Humanity took its first tentative steps into a wider universe, no longer isolated, no longer vulnerable." Tanner reflected on how far they had come, from a desperate last stand to architects of their own destiny. "What will your people do now?" Vela asked as they watched Earth's first diplomatic vessel prepare for its maiden voyage to the Ashtari homeworld. Tanner considered the question carefully, thinking of all he had witnessed ordinary people rising to extraordinary challenges. Adapting, innovating, refusing to surrender even when victory seemed impossible. "What humans always do," he answered finally, We'll explore, we'll learn, we'll make mistakes and fix them. We'll build something new." He smiled slightly. "And we'll remember who stood with us when we needed allies most." Above them, the stars beckoned with new possibility, a vast frontier where humanity's greatest strength would serve them well. The unrelenting determination to not just survive, but thrive, no matter the odds.